In 2013, I saw the movie 42, and as a promising young critic, it was one of the very first films I gave a 10 out of 10 to. One of the biggest reasons was the up-and-coming star at the time, Chadwick Boseman. I immediately became a fan of his portrayal of famous black figures like Jackie Robinson and James Brown in Get On Up. In 2016, Boseman portrayed the character of T'Challa, aka the Black Panther, in Captain America: Civil War. The inner child inside of me leapt for pure joy knowing that my all-time favorite black superhero had finally become a reality on the big screen. In 2017, I got a chance to interview Chadwick Boseman during the red carpet premiere of Marshall at the Chicago International Film Festival. To be honest, I thought I reached the pinnacle of my career and could focus on early retirement. In 2018, I was so inspired by Black Panther that I invited 50 kids from my local church and the local community to attend a Black Panther watch party for free. On August 28, 2020, I learned of the passing of Chadwick Boseman and was unable to hold back the emotional pain of the news. I later donated to the Colon Cancer Coalition organization in his honor. To say that Chadwick Boseman had an impact on my life both personally and professionally would be an understatement. Now, I say all of this because I want people to know that any criticisms I'm about to share are not coming from a place of hate, anger, or disrespect. I'm not doing this for clicks, views, or anything like that. I'm invested in the future of Black Panther as a genuine fan. Just like Marvel, I too want the best for Black Panther, and I also want to honor Chadwick in the best way possible. So there are no right or wrong answers with any of this, and rather, the following points are just things I really want people to consider. In early December 2020, President of Marvel Studios Kevin Feige announced the slate of films coming to theaters and streaming shows coming to Disney Plus in the coming years. During his announcement, he addressed the tragic passing of the late Chadwick Boseman.
I wanted to acknowledge the devastating loss of a dear friend and member of the Marvel Studios family. Chadwick Boseman was an immensely talented actor and an inspirational individual who affected all of our lives professionally and personally. His portrayal of T'Challa the Black Panther is iconic and transcends any iteration of the character in any other medium from Marvel's past. And it's for that reason that we will not recast the character.
I wanted to emphasize the last line of his quote because apparently many people have run with the assumption that Kevin Feige was talking in regard to only Black Panther 2. Nowhere in his statement or presentation at the time was he speaking regarding Black Panther 2. As a matter of fact, he did continue to say the following.
However, to honor the legacy that Chad helped us build through his portrayal of the King of Wakanda, we want to continue to explore the world of Wakanda and all of the rich and varied characters introduced in the first film. Writer-director Ryan Coogler is hard at work on the sequel now and will bring the film to you in theaters July 8th, 2022.
Again, Feige only made reference to Black Panther 2 after announcing the decision not to recast T'Challa. Now that you have the full quote in context, this raises several issues. I understand that Marvel Studios has a long history of playing word games and being ambiguous with their statements for the sake of secrecy or just flat out deception. However, it's hard for me to assume that they are being coy here, given the fact that this presentation was obviously planned to every scripted word that was said. Now, if we take Feige's statements literally, then the implication suggests that T'Challa will not be recast indefinitely. In other words, he's not just talking about Black Panther 2, but forever. If it is indeed the case that Marvel Studios will not recast the character of T'Challa for good, then I think that Marvel can only go about this in a couple of ways. The first route they could take is to regulate his character into the background. This could ring similar to what was done with Paul Walker's character in the Fast and Furious franchise. Despite the untimely passing of the real actor, the fictional actor continued to live on in the background. Now, if Marvel goes this route, it would be such a disappointment and disservice to the character of T'Challa. The other option would be to kill off his character. There was recently an internet rumor flying around saying that Marvel has considered killing T'Challa's character with cancer, similar to Chadwick Boseman. This supposedly would show that even the heroes are susceptible to sheer bad luck. That would also serve as some benefit in having both the cast and fictional characters in the story mourn for both the character and actor at the same time. One thing I've learned in these past years is that Black death has been overexposed. I've already seen far too many innocent black lives lost, ranging from police brutality to the COVID-19 pandemic. The last place I would want to see such trauma is in the MCU, where superheroes live on to bring you hope and inspiration. Beyond that, I couldn't be more opposed to either of these options because the character of T'Challa has so much more to give. For people who only know T'Challa from his appearances in the MCU, then it's understandable that they may not be aware of the number of spectacular stories that surround his character. What we've received in the MCU is but a small morsel of what defines and drives the character alone. In the comics, T'Challa has some epic stories such as his confrontations with Doctor Doom, or more famously, his encounters with Namor the Submariner. If you thought T'Challa's beef with Bucky was heated, then you're really not ready for the inferno between T'Challa and Namor. Those stories alone could be billion-dollar movies in their own right. Outside of that, the more important reason for continuing T'Challa's stories is because his character's development is just beginning. In Captain America Civil War, we only got a glimpse of his personal flaws. He overcame that and walked into Black Panther with yet another challenge: how to be king. At the conclusion of the film, we got to see him make a vital decision that eventually will impact the entire world by opening up Wakanda. We have yet to see him deal with the consequences of his decision. In the comics, T'Challa's decisions have always been one of the main driving forces to push the narratives and impact his character, along with Wakanda too. When it comes to Wakanda, it's always been at odds with holding on to tradition and being progressive and modern. T'Challa has always been caught in the crossroads of that, and the politics placed on his shoulder as king are nothing to simply dismiss. If Marvel goes with either of the aforementioned options by putting him in the background or killing him off, they'll be throwing away a ton of rich stories, character development, and action that audiences could appreciate. Moving on, Chadwick Boseman's portrayal of T'Challa was indeed significant because he brought to life an image that many black men and boys don't see practically at all. Until Black Panther, it was rare to see anything like the advanced world of Wakanda that was never colonized. Then, to top that off, to see that amazing world be led by a strong, intelligent, and capable black king was the stuff of dreams. I hope that Marvel avoids the misstep of becoming overly woke and try to substitute one form of representation for another. If Marvel Studios takes away T'Challa in any way, shape, or form, then that would be at the expense of the little black boys and men who look up to him. Those boys need a role model in a main character the same way little black girls need someone like Shuri, for example. Black boys do not deserve to have their hero pushed off to the sidelines, or worse, despite the real-life tragedy that has occurred. If anything, it is the fantasy of the character of T'Challa that helps us escape all the painful realities of the real world. But what about Shuri? A common thought that many fans have thrown out there is that Marvel should just simply pass down the mantle of Black Panther onto Shuri. After all, this was done in the comics, where Shuri did become the Black Panther in T'Challa's absence. Well, there are a couple of reasons why I think this is a little bit short-sighted. The Shuri in the comics is not the Shuri in the MCU. The comics version was much more ambitious when it came to being a warrior. During Challenge Day, for example, she was quick to take her turn to challenge for the title of Black Panther. We saw the MCU version of Shuri do the complete opposite because she doesn't carry the same motivation. Sure, we know that the MCU version of Shuri can throw down if she needs to. We saw her take up the Wakandan Hulk hands after all and defend the country from Killmonger's attacks. The MCU version is much more of a tech genius that would prefer to flourish in the technological advances of Wakanda. And you know what? That's fine. Plus, the comic version had years to develop as a character before she was able to take on the mantle of Black Panther and have her own comic run. When it comes to the MCU version of Shuri, I think it's a little too soon to give her the headliner push without giving her some time to develop first. Audiences fell in love with Shuri, but I believe it was because of the nature of her role. We experienced her in small doses and enjoyed it. She had some of the best humorous moments in the film, and her brilliance was inspiring. Nevertheless, Shuri is a supporting character. If we're not getting T'Challa anymore, then I worry that Shuri will struggle carrying the franchise as the new lead. Keep in mind that audiences will undoubtedly go into Black Panther with lofty expectations based off of the first film. It's going to be hard enough for Ryan Coogler and Marvel to replicate the magic that the first film had, but it'll be even more challenging to substitute T'Challa for Shuri. Come to think of it, I think Shuri's character would probably benefit more with the Disney Plus series like the other Marvel supporting characters that are getting their own series. I should also mention that these criticisms of Shuri should not be taken as bashing towards her at all. The problem lies more so with the unfortunate timing of these events. I really like her character and her contributions to the MCU. I absolutely love the representation she offers for little black girls as they witness an African princess on screen who's the smartest person on the planet. I also wouldn't mind seeing Shuri become the Black Panther later. Pushing her hastily into the forefront at the cost of losing T'Challa's character simply isn't worth it in my opinion. It also makes me wonder what Boseman would have thought of Marvel's decision. Now, I can't say that I knew Chadwick Boseman on a personal level, and I know any thoughts about how he would feel are purely speculation at best. However, I've watched many of his interviews. In them, the one thing that always stood out to me was how much he grasped how important both the character and the movie were to people. He knew that he was carrying a huge responsibility on his shoulders. That is in addition to the fact that this man was also fighting cancer. It's recently been revealed that his contract with Marvel included the option for a third Black Panther movie, meaning he had all intentions of keeping this role alive despite his own health issues at the time. His agent, Michael Green, affirmed Boseman's commitment to acting in general with the following quote: "Chadwick Boseman always wanted to do things that mattered or were meaningful. Like every role, even if it was a TV show, it had to be something that would represent something positive." I personally believe Chadwick would have wanted the role to be recast. He saw the joy and inspiration that all of us had seeing what he brought to life. Chadwick was willing to fight through his own sickness to continue pushing the role of T'Challa because while we made it about him, he made it all about us. Actually, I recall another interview that he was on, and he talked about how he doesn't like discussing the roles that he's passed on simply out of respect for the next actor who eventually would take it on. That level of foresight, consideration, and thoughtfulness suggests that Chadwick understood the importance of acting roles and opportunities for his fellow actors. I just find it hard to believe that he would be okay with no other black actor being able to pick up the baton. I think he'd be proud to know that all of his hard work set up another black person to follow in his footsteps and continue the legacy of the role he's made famous. Would Chadwick be humbled and appreciative of the honor Marvel's bestowing upon him? More than likely, yes. Would he be okay with uplifting other female characters like Shuri? I think absolutely he would. Would he be okay with another black actor not continuing the work of T'Challa's character because of his untimely death? I doubt it. Again, I understand that I'm just speculating and making assumptions here, but this is just where I think the evidence leads. Now we have to go into a darker subject, and if I can be a little bit more candid here, then we can't neglect the decades of discrimination and racism that's plagued Hollywood. When you look at the major white movie characters like Spider-Man, Superman, Batman, or James Bond, those characters and their movies are never going to have to worry about getting a big budget movie. White characters are allowed to fail. Many of those characters have failed numerous times within terrible movies. Not only do those characters still get new movies, but even when some of their actors die, they still get recast. Marvel's decision not to recast T'Challa is coming off, maybe unintentionally, but counter-progressive. When you don't recast one of the most popular black superheroes in recent times, it stifles the future impact the character can add onto their legacy. It's not something that would or has happened with popular white characters, nor is it even a consideration. T'Challa is an up-and-coming black superhero who has the potential to become as popular as Captain America or even Iron Man. T'Challa deserves the same luxury of living on and being seen, just like his white counterparts do in these fictional films. It feels incredibly unsettling that the option not to recast is happening to one of the few leading black superheroes that we have. Black superheroes like T'Challa shouldn't be subjected to discriminatory Hollywood math, where black characters are dealt with subtraction and division, while white characters get addition and multiplication. If we were to ignore the racial component, then one rebuttal to this is that Chadwick Boseman's situation is simply different because he died. Another rebuttal would be that even if one of those previously mentioned white actors died, they were eventually recast in sequels or reboots. There's a similar situation as with Heath Ledger's Joker, who was eventually recast in a separate film with Joaquin Phoenix. While that may not be an apples-to-apples comparison to Boseman's situation, people should consider the fact that Marvel Studios operates in an unconventional framework when it comes to their movies. They do have sequels, but it's their cinematic universe that takes a higher priority. Plus, the MCU doesn't allow their sequels to operate in a separate capacity, nor do they reboot their franchises. We have examples of that when they recast Ed Norton's Hulk with Mark Ruffalo, or Terrence Howard's War Machine with Don Cheadle taking over. The MCU simply moves forward. After 23 movies and a full slate of movies and Disney Plus shows to come, there doesn't seem to be an end in sight that would call for any kind of reboot. To put it another way, fans shouldn't hold their breath hoping to see T'Challa again in a reboot or a sequel, because the MCU doesn't show any signs of that being a possibility. With that said, I want Marvel to keep that same energy with the character of T'Challa. I think Marvel Studios would be taking a huge gamble if they want Black Panther 2 to focus on the world-building aspect of Wakanda and its supporting characters. Could a Batman movie work about Gotham and everyone else except for Batman? Will audiences flock to a Thor movie with no Thor, but we explore more of Asgard? If the answer is no, then I don't think it'll be the easiest sell for audiences with Black Panther 2. Now, the previously listed issues may seem worrisome, but there is a light at the end of the tunnel for Marvel Studios. Earlier, I mentioned that Marvel had two logical options with the decision not to recast T'Challa. Actually, there's a third option. That option is the ultimate reset or trump card comics have been using for decades now: the multiverse. Kevin Feige could have been both literal and ambiguous with his statement by saying that they will not recast Boseman's T'Challa. With movies like Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness coming up, it's entirely possible that Marvel Studios could find a creative way to recast another version of T'Challa from a different parallel Earth. While some audiences may find it difficult to see anyone else besides Boseman as T'Challa, I would say that people will feel better if the right condition is met. That condition is simply getting an exceptionally talented actor that can carry the role with the same level of integrity as Boseman. When it comes to movie audiences, I'd say they're just the same as sports fans. Even if you have a terrible loss or a losing franchise, the number one cure will always be wins. In other words, get a phenomenal actor of the likes of Yahya Abdul-Mateen II or John David Washington, and audiences will be won over once the product is placed on screen. Now take note that the issues listed before are speculation based off of very limited information. We haven't even seen a trailer for Black Panther 2, nor do we even know what the plot is. I should also mention that I truly do believe in the creative genius of Ryan Coogler and producer Nate Moore. I believe that they both understand the impact of the Black Panther franchise, and they have yet to let us down. And I do believe that they understand how important this means to many of us fans. To Marvel's credit, they are doing what they believe is right to honor Chadwick Boseman. As a huge fan of Chadwick myself, I commend them for it. I love the various ways Marvel Studios has paid tribute to him too. They made a wonderful intro video and ran a Black Panther tribute video that I thought was amazing. I really do believe that we can honor the real-life actor without compromising the fictional character of T'Challa. I fully understand that a lot of things can happen in the future that will quell many of my concerns. Marvel could come out with a statement on the matter to clarify things, or maybe in time we'll discover that the multiverse option was the plan all along. For the time being, however, I believe that there are deeper ramifications that are being neglected if they never recast T'Challa at all. recasting T'Challa is the simpler and better route. While I will be the first in line to support the film regardless, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't concerned as well. Anyway, those are my thoughts on the matter. What do you think? Do you think that Marvel should recast T'Challa? Do you think they should leave it as is? Or do you have some other suggestions on what Marvel should do? Now, if it is the case that Marvel decides not to recast T'Challa, then I think the better solution is to make a Disney Wakanda show. Be sure to subscribe and hit those notifications because I'm going to make a video explaining exactly why this is a much better route for them to take. Anyway, thank you so much for taking the time to watch my video. I'd absolutely appreciate it. I've got more videos and reviews to do for you all, and until next time, I'll see you all later.